Hello. Hang on a sec. Brilliant. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Lovely to see you. So I don't know how many of you are here because you read the blurb I sent yesterday on the email. I don't know how many of you are here because you just like a bit of yin on a Friday night, but welcome. In the email I said, this is going to be it's a really simple practice. It's coming back to some very simple poses. Not a lot of obvious stuff going on in terms of frills and variations and all that kind of thing. And we're working in relation to traditional Chinese medicine. We're working with the kidney and urinary bladder meridians. And the kidney meridian basically runs up the inside of the legs, goes in through the groin and then into the body, close to the kidneys, and then out at the throat. And the poses that we will be taking target specifically the inside of the legs. And then the urinary bladder comes up the back of the legs and up the back of the body. So we're also going to be targeting the back of the body. So you can probably already imagine some of the poses we'll be doing. It's a little bit weird. Usually I would think of working in this way with a yin practice in the season of winter, because it's a practice that's very much to do with depleted reserves and trying to restore our energetic reserves, because the kidney and the urinary bladder in particular are understood by traditional Chinese medicine as being the main underpinnings, if you like, of the play of energy in the body. So when the kidney and urinary bladder meridians are okay and those organs are well nourished, everything else can kind of tick along quite nicely. So it's not winter, but for whatever reason, and I'm sharing my practice with you, that it might not resonate, but for whatever reason, I feel very tired at the minute and quite anxious about the future in a way that I'm not usually. There's a little bit of fear around, and I sense that maybe other people are feeling the same, but I might be projecting entirely, in which case, welcome to my projection. And when the kidney and urinary bladder are out of balance, we can feel very much more fear, more out of control, more doubt in our lives, rather than living life from a position of abundance. And that is really it, that the practice is targeting those kinds of feelings. And if that doesn't resonate with you, the practice should still be deeply restorative, deeply nourishing. You will need possibly nothing at all. You could have a bolster and a blanket handy. That's if you want to come into more restorative versions of the poses. And the wondrous Debbie, welcome Debbie, asked me when she received the email for a poem today, and I got a little bit carried away and I found a lot of poems. Should watch what you wish for, Debbie. So I've got a lot of poems that all like jumped out at me. So it may be that today I read a few poems. Should we see how we get on? I don't want to talk too much about the poses. I want to bring us into the poses and stay a while. So any words will be probably poetry. So welcome, quite a long spiel. We're going to start in a butterfly pose. So if you would like to, I'm going to use a blanket. Like to, there's a message. Oh, okay. All right, Kirsten, I saw a bit of it. I thought there might be a problem. I haven't read all of it, but if it's about sending poems out to people, I should actually put something together as a resource, and of course I will share them. It's something I love most, is poetry. So butterfly, you might want to sit on the edge of something to give your pelvis a head start. Soles of your feet together. And if you are used to butterfly and you want a little bit more activation, if you like, you could place your feet on a raised surface like a block. You don't need to. And your heels should be about 2 hands width lengths from the groin. So you're not bringing your feet all the way in. So find your sitting bones. Take a lovely breath in as you look for length in the spine. And then you're going to surrender yourself forwards, and we'll stay in this first pose for 5 minutes. If you know that you're hypermobile in the hips, you would place bricks underneath your thighs to prop up your legs. Taking this first minute to arrive in the body this evening. Simply noticing what's present for you right now in this pose. And all I'm going to do every now and again is ask you to notice where you think you might be holding on and where you might be able to soften in, surrender just a little bit more. There's nowhere to go. For this practice, you could simply be aware of a natural breath. But if you like an ujjayi breath, a gentle constriction in the back of the throat, a very soft ujjayi, you might find that brings you deeper into your practice. So you choose. And stay very, very close to sensation. We're halfway through this pose now. Where do you feel it? And I'm going to read first poem by a yoga teacher, physicist and philosopher Jeff Foster. Some of you may know Jeff. And it's called Sacred Exhaustion. Your tiredness has dignity to it. Do not rush to pathologize it or push it away, for it may contain great intelligence, even medicine. You have been on a long journey from the stars, friend. Bow before your tiredness now. Do not fight it any longer. There is no shame in admitting that you cannot go on. Even the courageous need to rest. For a great journey lies ahead, and you will need all of your resources. Come sit by the fire of presence. Let the body unwind and drop into the silence here. Forget about tomorrow. Let go of the journey to come and sink into this evening's warmth. Every great adventure is fueled by rest at its heart. Your tiredness is noble, friend, and contains healing power, if you would only listen. You're coming to your final 30 seconds of this pose. And taking a full breath in and a long breath out. Can you come up super slow, reassembling your spine one vertebra at a time, and keep your chin into your chest, and you might even with your fingertips like to stroke up the inside of your legs, aware of the kidney meridian. And keep your chin into your chest and take the tips of your forefinger and middle finger of the right hand. Place them in between your eyebrows and then very gently bring the head back up. And then release your legs. We'll take a moment to feel the rebound of this pose. Taking the weight back into your hands and simply allowing the body to acclimatize. So simple, so sweet, so pure, this practice. It strips us to our core. And then we come into another very familiar pose, Sphinx. And Sphinx, most of us will be okay with the elbows underneath the shoulders, maybe the palms together or the forearms parallel. If this already feels a little bit too intense in the lumbar spine in your lower back, because lower back pain is a symptom of the kidney and urinary bladder meridians being a bit out of kilter. Maybe that you want to just come down a notch. And we're going to stay for 3 minutes in Sphinx and then come up to Seal for 3 minutes, if that feels right. And some of you may want to try a little bit of engagement of the buttocks and drawing your tailbone down towards your heels a little if you feel there's just not enough space in your lower back. And come to your breath. And come to your breath, and come to your breath. And where can you soften now? Where can you let go? And what can you feel? What are the qualities of all sensations in the body right now. We have 30 seconds more in Sphinx, and then we'll bring it up if you want to seal. So you have three choices. You could come down a bit if it's just been too intense for your back. You could stay exactly where you are, or you could bring your hands closer in towards the body, about mat distance apart, a bit like seal flippers with your fingers pointing out. Some people might like to place a bolster under the front of the pelvis, the lower belly, for a restorative version, but that's not exactly what I'm teaching now, but go ahead if that's what feels delicious for you. And this immediately brings a much richer set of sensations into the back of the body. And simultaneously opens the front of the body. Breathe. For anybody new to Yin or new to teaching Yin, really it's this kind of sequence which is kind of a great way to start. It doesn't mean we don't come back to it always, but it's a great kind of coming back to basics, coming back to the source that underpins the complex branches of the energy system that comes out of this trunk or this source or these roots. Breathe. And every time your mind wanders, bring it back very lovingly to the breath. Nothing more complicated than that. And it's all right to have thoughts. It just depends what we attach to them. How much do we identify? We're coming to the final 30 seconds of this pose. Breathe. And taking one more deep breath in. And then wherever you are, coming all the way down onto your belly, take your hands underneath your forehead. And we'll start by taking a full breath into the belly. Feel it inflating against the floor. And then exhale. And then draw the right knee up towards the armpit for flapping fish. And if you can, turn your head to the left. If that's not going to work for you, you could turn your head to the right, and that's fine. And notice what this strange pose does for your lower back, for your sacrum, your sacroiliac joint, and breathe. And soften and let go for a few more seconds. We're just taking this pose for 1 minute on each side. When you're ready, sliding the right leg back and bringing the left knee up for the same pose on the other side. Seeing if you can look towards the right, but it's also fine to look towards the left. And see if you can let go into all the bones and the tissues of the pelvis here. And breathe. A few more breaths here. And then gently slide the left knee back. Take a full breath in and out, feeling the whole of the front of the body here against the mat. And bring your hands by your ribs and push yourself up. Just for a moment. If you feel you need to take a moment in rabbit pose, that's quite a nice counter pose. But our flapping fish should already have countered the compression in the lumbar spine, which is what we were really doing with those poses. And what we've prepared ourselves for now is probably one of the most stronger back bends in an asana practice, and in for the lumbar spine, that is, and in yin, and it's saddle. What we haven't really prepared are the quadriceps. So just staying for 5 minutes in saddle will prepare the quadriceps on the way, if you like. So saddle is this version we're going to do. We're going to sit on the heels if possible, and if your knees separate and come up, that's fine. I'll show you the full pose and then I'll show you adaptations, because this is intense. I've done this perhaps 3 times this week, and this is the pose that is the most transformative, let's say. You come to lying back and eventually your back relaxes, and it is possible, it'll be possible for some of you to come into this pose. If that's just not going to happen, you could come halfway and come onto your forearms, absolutely fine. And or you might want a little treat and lie back on a bolster and make it restorative. And I would put a little bit of a lift under the end of the bolster, maybe even a blanket over the top. So I know this is one of the most challenging of poses, and 5 minutes is a long hold. If you find that it's the front of your ankles and the tops of your feet that bother you, then take a flannel or a towel or a rolled up blanket there. And if you're using the bolster, come all the way up to the bolster so the whole of your back can come. I haven't put the timer on yet. I'm just waiting for everybody to get comfortable, or I'm not sure comfortable is the right word. Now I am putting the timer on. And for the first minute, don't worry about contraction. Your body might find, this is a pose actually which takes us straight into fear for many people. A lot of back bends do. But if you're able to breathe and stay with it. Where there's intensity, go right into the heart of it and soften. And then see what happens. And breathe. What would happen if you removed the word anxious and just paid attention to these flickering sensations in the belly? What would happen if you took away the concept lonely and simply became fascinated with this heavy feeling in the heart area? What would happen if you deleted the image sick or broken or bad and just got curious about the tightness in the throat, the pressure in the head, the ache in the shoulders? What would happen if you stopped looking for solutions and checked to see if there was actually a problem here? Come out of the exhausting storyline, friend. This is Jeff Foster again. He likes saying friend. It's not true. It was never true. Commit sacred awareness to a single living moment. Come closer to yourself now. Bring warmth to the tender places inside. Infuse sensation with the light of attention. It's never as bad as you think. You have about 2 more minutes in this pose. Are you able to relinquish anything that you're holding on to right now to soften and drop another layer? Breathe. Got 1 more minute. Stay very, very, very close here to sensation. We're coming into your final 30 seconds. So to come out of saddle, I want you to really take care. This is it's a strong pose. I like personally to grip onto the sides of the mat and press into my elbows to come up first to my forearms, but I really use my abdominal muscles to protect the back. And from there, and come up super slow. I'm going to spend 1 minute simply sitting like this, hands on the thighs. If you are uncomfortable kneeling, then bring your legs out in front of you. And simply observe the rebound of that pose in this neutral spine. Very, very curious about your breath. And then from here, slide your hands forwards. And now we will spend a whole minute in rabbit pose. Or if you fancy a full child's pose, go ahead. But I really love coming halfway like this, with a length at the back of the neck. And breathe and feel what's going on with the body as you take a counter pose. You're reversing the direction of the spine, the plane in which your spine is moving. In a back bend, you're extending, and in a forward fold like this, you're flexing. Beautiful. And then very, very gently straighten your arms and just walk your hands back in again. So we're being very tender with ourselves, very gentle. And then we come into the simplest of forward folds. Hope you don't feel cheated by the simplicity of this practice. We're going to come into caterpillar or Paschimottanasana. And again, 5 minutes. And you might like to just sit up on something. You might like to have a bolster. You might like to have a brick. You might like to, if you're feeling restorative, you could take your knees over the bolster. But one of the things we are trying to do with this pose is activate and nourish the meridians in the back of the legs. And to do that, it's more like a hamstring stretch. You'd want your legs straight. You could bring your bolster down on top of the legs if you like. So you choose. Find your sitting bones and take a full breath in, and then settle yourself down for 5 minutes. There should be no pain at all in the back. So if there is, I'd like you to bend your knees up a bit or sit up higher on something. And come to sensation and come to the breath. And I'm going to leave you to simply drop. Feel it completely. Every out breath is a little release, a little surrender. I'm going to read a third poem by Jeff Foster. Trust the darkness now. If you are lost, if nothing makes sense anymore, if all your reference points have collapsed, if the old life is crumbling now, if the mind is foggy, tired, busy, if the organism is exhausted and longs to rest, celebrate, trust. This is a rite of passage, not an error. You are healing in your own original way. Contact the ground now. Breathe in, out. Make room for the visitors, the sorrow, doubt, fear, anger. An ancient emptiness. They just want to be felt. They just want to pass through. You are a vessel, not a separate self. You are a sky, not the passing weather. An old life is falling away. A new life is being born. Others may not understand, but trust anyway. Celebrate. Contact the ground. Stay very, very close in this final minute. Final 30 seconds. When you come up, like we did before, can you keep your chin into your chest? Walk your hands slowly back towards your hips and then come up vertebra by vertebra. Head bowed forwards. And then from here, take your forefinger and middle finger in between the eyebrows and very softly raise the head. Take a moment here in this simple, neutral position to feel the rebound, to feel the residue. We're going to come to another forward fold, and I'm going to give you a whole lot of options. So I'm going to speak a little bit and then give you the opportunity to drop in. The pose is dragonfly. So dragonfly is a wide-angled forward fold. And do you know what can be really nice here is to do this up against a wall. We haven't done this before, You simply come up against a wall with your hips as close up to the wall as possible so that you're really up against it. And then take your legs as far apart as they'll go with the support of the wall. That's one option. If you just fancy lying on your back, the other option is to do exactly that same shape, sitting and coming forwards in between your legs. You could have a bolster or something to cushion yourself here. You could take cushions underneath your knees. And so if you're going to do anything I've said so far, the hold will be for 5 minutes, but you might want to take 2.5 minutes in a lateral dragonfly. And I'm just going to quickly show you what that could look like. It could either look like this, really encouraging a side stretch, which isn't related to the kidney and urinary bladder meridians, but it's just a lovely feeling. And or you could come down over one leg. And if you're doing that, you also have the option of folding the other leg back if you want. So there's a lot going on. Let's say the pose is 6 minutes. So if you're doing one of the asymmetrical versions, you get 3 minutes on each side. So if you'd like to choose your version now, and I've put the timer on for 6 minutes. I just fancy doing straight down the middle myself. Listen to what your body needs and drop in to find your edge so you can stay. So we're going right for the kidney meridians here, up the inside of the legs, right into the groin. You should be able to feel that. Maybe you're still breathing your soft ujjayi breath. Breathe. Can you drop another layer? Can you drop a little deeper? Stay very, very close. These silent practices can be challenging for some of us. If you have been in an asymmetrical pose, meaning if you've come over to lateral over one side, slowly bring yourself out of that. Take a moment with a neutral spine before you then come over the other side for 3 more minutes. Breathe. Any area of the body where there's contraction, observe and give yourself permission to let it go. Coming towards the final 30 seconds. Breathe. And taking a full breath in and a long breath out. And then slowly, if you're against the wall, if you'd like to slowly bend your knees into your chest and roll over to one side and then come up to sitting. If you're seated, slowly come up either over one leg or up the center. If you've managed to keep your chin into your chest, bring your forefinger and middle finger in between your eyebrows and then lift the head. Take a moment here to feel the body. And you can use your fingers behind your knees to draw your legs in. And we'll take a few windshield wipers here. So take your feet a little way apart, hands behind you. And simply wash through the hips. You can look over the opposite shoulder. And then slowly, slowly come the other way. This should feel very fluid and comforting, I think. Take a few rounds, we've got lots of time. Wonderful. And then we come down for a spinal twist. Now again, I want to give you different options. So if you could just watch me briefly. The simplest option, we'll come to the left first. The simplest option would be just drop your knees to the left and take your eyes to the right. You could take the right arm up past your ear if you want a bit more of a feeling in the arm. You could take your left hand to the right knee. And I always say this with twists, but basically the position of your knees will relate to where you're targeting the spine. So if your knees are relatively far away and down, you're targeting the lower spine. If you bring your knees all the way up towards your armpit, you'll feel this kind of around the area of the shoulder blades and the thoracic. So that's one version. The other version would be, as you come over to the left, to lengthen out the right leg. You might prefer that. Another version is to make it kind of super cozy and place the bolster between your legs, maybe even a bolster underneath or a cushion underneath your arms. And then the most intense version, which doesn't make it better by any means, depends what you want, is to wrap the left leg over the right, maybe take the foot behind. If you're doing this version, you need to shift your hips over to the right before you come down. And this is much, much, much. There's a lot more going on here in the side waist. you'll feel it more in the spine, pelvis. I'm going to put the timer on for 5 minutes. It's a long hold, so choose the best one for you. And with these long holds, the mind can wander. My daughter, who has just come home from London for a few days, said this morning that she finds it really hard to meditate or do yoga nidra because all she does is think. Her mind wanders. And it's interesting, isn't it, that we think we're supposed to stop thought. In my understanding, that is not the point. It's more to observe thoughts and maybe seek greater spaces between them. And to notice how we identify them, how we tell stories. A bit like one of the Jeff Foster poems, it's not true, it's just stories. If you're over to the left and you're feeling that the right arm and the right shoulder are coming off the floor, cushion those, lift, take a blanket or a cushion there so you can feel a surface to support you. And then drop in. Okay, here's a poem by Portia Nelson, which I've heard another yoga teacher read. I can't remember who, so you might have heard it. You might have heard all of them. It's called An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's habit. It's my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down a different street. I love that. How hard is it to do? You have a minute more on this side. It's a long, long twist. And I imagine some of you will have changed the intensity of the twist halfway through, and that's absolutely fine. Breathe. Final 20 seconds.
And a full breath in and a long breath out. Start coming out of this side by bringing your head back first. And if your legs are entangled, disentangle them. And then very slowly lift the right knee. Plant the right foot on the floor. Lift the left knee. Plant the left knee on the floor. Just straighten your spine out on the floor for a moment in a constructive rest position. And then slide both feet away to feel the rebound before we take this to the other side. Feel everything. And whatever twist you did to the left, can you do the same twist to the right? Maybe you're using a bolster, maybe the right leg straight. Maybe you wrap the left leg over the right and shift the pelvis to the left before you come down. And I'm putting the timer on for 5 minutes. And remember to look over to the left if your neck allows it, and maybe stretch the left arm up by the ear if that just feels good. And I'll leave you now. Breathe. And soften and melt. Breathe. You may notice in a twist like this that there are minute movements of surrender as your body continues to let go. So good to give it time like this. Can you observe every millimeter? Stay very, very close to the breath. Coming into the final minute of this pose. You might like to try breathing a little deeper. How soft are you right now behind your eyes? How soft is the palate of your mouth and your cheeks, your jaws? Gently bring the head back to neutral. Unravel your legs if they're entangled. And bring the left knee first. Take the foot on the floor. And then bend up the right knee. And shuffle yourself into a straight line. Find your way. And if it feels nice, extend your arms and your legs out to relish and absorb the residue. What do you notice? We're going to take 5 minutes in stirrup or happy baby, which basically is this. The alternative, if it's really hard for you to come into this pose for so long, is to simply come up against a wall, take your knees apart and push your feet against the wall. We're coming back to targeting the inside of the legs, coming into the groin. So you choose if you want your wall or if you want to hold on to your feet, drawing your knees closer down towards the armpits. And it's absolutely fine if you peel your lower back a bit off the floor or if you choose to have it sticking down. So again, this is a long hold. And it's important in this pose because there's a little bit of gripping on the feet. It's important to make sure that you're really soft in the throat and the eyes, around the collarbones. And I've got 2 more poems to read you, and I'll read one now by Ellen Bass. It's called The Thing Is. The thing is to love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief, you think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes. And you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again.
So you're halfway through the 5 minutes. If you need to adjust, obviously, please do. And breathe. You may find, I should have said this before, you may find that if your elbows or upper arms are in contact with the inside of your legs, you can use your arms as a lever and push your legs a little bit more apart to enrich sensation. Breathe. And you're coming into your final minute. Final minute. If you need to rock a little bit, that's fine. Breathe. Final 30 seconds. And then when you're ready, simply bring your legs together. Give yourself a little hug. We'll stay about a minute or so, drawing everything in. Breathe. And the final pose before Shavasana is a little inversion, which is just deeply restful, deeply restorative. And I'll give you a couple of options. You could take your forelegs over a chair. So if you can imagine, I'm miming here. You can imagine that I've got a chair under my forelegs, maybe with a blanket. If you're doing this version, your thighs need to be vertical, perpendicular with the floor. You don't want to be at that kind of an angle. So that's fine. You might find you want to place a blanket under your lower back. The other option is legs up the wall. So I'm not going to come up the wall, but if you want to do this, sit sideways first of all, with your hip right bang up against the wall, so that when you swivel your legs up, you're as close to the wall as possible. And an option we did the other day that I've forgotten actually, which you could do if you had a belt, is to take a loop of the belt over your feet and then swaddle your legs with the belt, wind it around, so you feel very bound, very secure. So choose what you want. This is just for you to rest deeply. And I'm seeing the time. Yeah. We might take a little bit more than 5 minutes here. I'll see how we go. I'm putting the timer on now. And this should only feel delicious. There should be no strong sensations here. You should feel completely supported either by your chair or by the wall. And Kirsten, I'm trying to remember which poem I read on Monday. This is the problem. I'll look back. This is an opportunity in this very restorative inversion to begin to lengthen your exhalations. If that isn't something that's immediately available to you, you could count in your inhale for, let's say, 3 or 4, and gradually increase the count of the exhale. So you could start by, say you breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6, and then gradually increase it to 8, to 10, maybe even to 12. It's a really lovely way to soothe the nervous system. I'm going to read a poem by Mary Oliver called Today. Today I'm flying low, and I'm not saying a word. I'm letting all the voodoos of ambition sleep. The world goes on as it must. The bees in the garden rumbling a little, the fish leaping, the gnats getting eaten, and so forth. But I'm taking the day off, quiet as a feather. I hardly move, though really I'm travelling a terrific distance. Stillness, one of the doors into the temple. Do you know, I'm going to read that again. It's lovely, isn't it? I've only found it today. Today I'm flying low, and I'm not saying a word. I'm letting all the voodoos of ambition sleep. The world goes on as it must, the bees in the garden rumbling a little, the fish leaping, the gnats getting eaten, and so forth. But I'm taking the day off, quiet as a feather. I hardly move, though really I'm travelling a terrific distance. Stillness, one of the doors into the temple. And to come out of this inversion, whether you're on a chair or against the wall, you can bring your knees into your chest, maybe even have a little roll around until you're ready to roll over onto one side. And now it's time to come to rest in Shavasana. So make yourselves super comfortable, maybe bolster under the knees, maybe a cushion under your head, and cover yourself in a blanket, maybe an eye pillow. Come to rest and simply remain softly alert to everything that arises, however subtle. Any tiny sensation, any thought, the breath. Soak it all up. I'm beginning now to breathe a little deeper. And coming back to a sense of the weight of your body on the mat. You might like to take a few very gentle movements. You might like to give yourself a little bit of a hug, have a little bit of a rock, until you're ready to roll over to one side. And join me when you're ready in a seated position, hands together in front of the heart space. And closing your eyes when you get here for a few moments to simply observe how you feel now at the end of this practice, this simple, pure practice. Is there anything that you want to take away from it? And then taking a full breath in towards the heart space. And as you breathe out, bowing your head chin to your chest. And when you're ready to breathe in, lifting your head gently and opening your eyes. So thank you ever